review, basically what I did is I did my little stop cut about 1/8 of an inch down with a little straight burr like this. Took my little carbide cutter, just get some of that wood out of there to begin with. So all I have to do is use this little ground off cutter. This is what I'm using to establish my depth around all my piece. If I was on a piece like this, I would do it in all the background areas to get a uniform depth. So just I'll clean up right there. So I clean up my edge. I get that nice little square edge out about 1/4 of an inch that I can come in there and level it off with another bit. But this one, it's a little tricky to do, but it's just kind of use it like a plunge router, nibble over and sweep across, nibble over and sweep across until I get down to my wall height that I want to get. Now, one of the bits that I really like, and that would be what I would do if I had like this serrated edge. Say I was going to use something like this magnolia leaf or my live oak leaves, or even the step pattern that I do in here. I'm just going to show you real quickly. This is one of my favorite bits. This is the one I saw Jack modify, and it kind of opened up the whole world to me. Basically taking this one to the grinder and grinding it flat. So basically making a safe end. I ground off all the little carving flutes, and so I have this little sharp edge out to the side of the piece. But I can come in here with this one. Say I had a smooth edge leaf, I can bottom that out right up next to my line. Sweep it on around. Take care of everything that I just did with that other one with this one little bit. So as long as I hold that perpendicular, I just bottom it up in there, because of course if I tilt it, that sharp edge is going to start cutting. But I can just sweep that on around. So if I had an edge, let's follow this brain right here. If I had an edge of a leaf, I just come in here and sweep it on around to get that little edge. That's basically the bit that I use to do the. If I can figure out a method that I can do it with a rotary carver as opposed to hand carving or reciprocating carver, I will. So you can actually modify a commercially made bit. I'm going to get a little more depth here. Now, I started over here smoothing it out, but that cuts all gives a really rough cut to begin with, but that was just to get the wood out of there. I would go with that same little burr, this one, quit rolling, and the one that's not modified. It gives a smoother cut, and I can come in here and clean up. Let's get up here a little bit and clean up that best that I can. I try and get as level as I can on the background, but generally speaking, I'm going to do some kind of texture, either burning or texturing in the background. Because if you're trying to leave a smooth surface back here, you've got to figure out how you're going to sand in every little nook and cranny. Because you can get it smooth, but you're liable to sand in little divots and everything, so it's not going to look like a level surface. But if you come in there with some kind of texture, it covers up a multitude of sins. You can blend in a lot of stuff with that, and it will appear to look more level than it might be. So the reason I carried that little 90-degree angle a little ways is I can get in here with a bigger bit and don't have to get right up next to my the wall of my leaf. Now another reason, now I could use, there's a lot of bits you could use for this. There is no hard and fast rules on what you need to use. You just figure out what works and go with it. Now one of the reasons I like this little bud-shaped bit as opposed to, say, a cylinder bit or something like that is I've got that little bit of angle, which gives my handpiece just a little more lift. So like I said before, a lot of it's troubleshooting on how to figure out how to get there. So if I get a little bit of lift, then I've got a little bit of clearance that I can get my hand or get my tool in around things. So we're just going to kind of level that off best we can. So once I do that on the whole piece, establish my background depth, then I'm going to start playing with my leaves and getting my leaves some shape. So it doesn't matter how many leaves I have over my whole vessel. When I start out for this method, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on what visually appears to be the bottom leaf. So I'm going to start out on this one and start giving it some shape. This is a sycamore leaf, but kind of has the same vein pattern as the maple. So you can kind of see how this leaf is kind of curled along those mid veins in there. So that's kind of how I'm going to shape this leaf. Now you can't come in here and reduce that whole leaf down, because on the side of your vessel, when you're looking across the room, it's going to look like somebody took a big old bite out of the side of your piece. So points on all of my leaves need to touch the outside surface of the vessel. So your eye will connect the dots between it, so it'll still maintain that original shape that you had on your piece. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm kind of draw this in here so you can see where we are on this. So basically I'm going to repeat the steps that I just did. I'm going to use that little straight burr to begin with, where I'm working on the bottom leaf, but essentially going to be outlining the top leaf. So be sure when you're doing this, you're on the correct side of your line. The main thing you have to be pay attention, and this stem is going to this one, is when I'm going to outline it, do my little stop cut just like I did before, but I'm only going to go half the wall depth down. So I'm going to outline this little stem here, and basically that's going to be about close to your 1/8 of an inch, right there. Any place that two leaves are overlapping, I'm going to go only half the wall, whatever my wall depth is, I'm only going to go half the wall depth down, because at the very end, what you're going to have to do is create that little shadow line or undercut under both those leaves. So you have to have enough wood there that you can come back and do your undercutting. Once I get in the interior of the leaf, I can go deeper. But right now I'm probably going to go about my 1/8 of an inch. Anytime that anything's close to the edge, I make sure I only go about half the wall depth down. Now once I get into the interior, particularly like right in this lobe where that vein is, and in this area right in here, I can actually go to my background depth. And I get some depth in there too. So half the wall depth down, any place that anything's overlapping. But once I get in the interior, I can go a bit deeper. Instead of going to the cut saw this time, I'm just going to go to this bit to give this leaf a little bit of shape. It's not quite as aggressive, so I don't have to worry about messing up things. Okay, for this stem, I've got this portion of the stem, I mean, it's all on the surface of my vessel right now. So to get that stem to look like it's just ducking under, all I have to do is just taper that edge. Now it's ducking up under that leaf right there. And this is still on the surface of my vessel, or the outside curve that I originally had. Same thing for this little nub. I'm just going to remove that. I'm going to start tapering this back. Now you'll notice on a real leaf, which is what I like to achieve, if I was actually going to do that leaf, I would probably have to have a piece of wood about 3/4 of an inch thick. So you'll notice that that whole edge of that leaf is not all in one plane. So I'm going to kind of break up the edge of my leaf. Now on this leaf right here, I've got my wood grain is going this way. So it's going straight across that little tip. So maybe I'll curve that tip down so that when I undercut, I don't have this piece that's going to be hanging up in the breeze. So that might be a good place to break up the edge. So I got it high here, still touching my original curve. Maybe I'll break up the edge over here. So I got it kind of high here. Maybe I'll lower one side of this little tip over here, which will give it a little bit of a twist. And I'm going to leave in this little corner here, I'm going to kind of leave it high. So I can almost dig a cave back there and make a real heavy shadow back there. So maybe I'll curve this tip down and leave this one high, and I've got it taken down there. So right in here I can get some really good depth in there. So all I'm doing right now is going for overall shape of the leaves. Let's see. Let's curve this tip down a little bit. Just breaking up the edge. So I still have points that are touching the surface of the original turn vessel. But I'm just using this still to kind of clean it up and get that nice sharp edge at the bottom, at the side and the bottom of this leaf here, which is actually the surface of the other leaf. This time kind of just following the contour. Being sure that any place anything's close to the edge, that I'm only going half the wall depth down. I could actually get a little more depth in here. So right in here in that interior of the leaf, you see that I'm going, hopefully you see, that I'm going to my same background depth. So if I go to my background depth there on a turning, I know that I still have a good 1/8 of an inch of material back there before I go through it. Okay, over in here I can get a little more depth in the interior of the leaf. As I come around to the edge, be sure that I only go half the wall depth down. So that I get some good material there that I can come in here and do both the undercuts on those. Okay, now that I've got that kind of cleaned up, I'm going to kind of blend that all in with that ground off, with the not ground off one of those stump cutters. And I'm basically just kind of floating that tool across there. Blending those cut lines together. Okay, so I've got some, y'all see the shape on that. Let's see some shape on that. So if I had more leaves, then I'd work on the next one, keep working around my piece till I got them all shaped. So since this is the last one, we're going to start giving it some shape. When I get into the interior of the leaf right there, I can go to my background depth. Give it lots of shape in there. Now this burr is about $8.50 for this one. They have most of the bits that I buy are what's called Stump Cutters, which basically have that little serrated edge. I find those the best bits. Now this one is a carbide stump cutter, but I think it's about 28 bucks. So don't know that it's necessarily going to last 3 times as long. So and when we're talking about bits, but get the German-made bits. You will be much happier. Now this little 6-pack of bits is of course Swiss-made, but I haven't found anything that, you know, these are pretty inexpensive and they do the trick. But if you have a chance, get the German-made bits. They actually cut. When you're carving over your vessel or something and you're getting some burning, first check and see if you're on ingrain. Of course, that's going to be most likely the place you're going to get burning. If that's the case, turn your speed down or use a lighter touch. Break this up in here.
When you first started carving, Dixie, have you always been a power carver, or did you start with carving tools?
Oh, I started with carving tools, and then I started with the Dremel, kind of shaping my hand-carved tools initially, and then I started doing, you know, originally when I started carving, I was carving in the round. I did a lot of bird carving, and like I said, you know, the other little whittling projects. So yeah, anything to speed those up, I was kind of roughing out as much as I could with the Dremel tools. And then once I got into the turning and started carving on the turnings, I started with like the reciprocating carver initially. I was just kind of incising a pattern in there. And then once I got into the relief carving, that's when I discovered the power carving. Okay, I'm kind of breaking up this edge in here. Breaking up the end. And on the back, I just took it down through that stem. I was kind of getting this little look like this stem has in here. Kind of breaking up the edge right there. And the reason we want to go to our background depth in some places like that is it gives us some good wall height. That's a great place to break up the edge there, because I've actually got some wood that I can do. If you got a boo-boo or something like that, well, okay, I can break up the edge right there and take that away. I've got some good wall height here, so maybe I'll break that edge up a little bit right there. I had some wall height over here. So that was a good spot to kind of break up that edge. I just want to give it as realistic a look as I can. Let's see. Turn that edge down kind of around that stem there. I got a funny little green in there. And sometimes I'm having to turn this piece a lot so that I can get in there. And all else fails, if I can't get in a spot, a ball bit is the perfect size. You know, you can use the end, you can use the side, so you can get into lots of little nooks and crannies with a ball bit. Alright, let's get this guy some shape in here. The more wall thickness you have, the more contours you can give to these leaves, and get them to really curl around if you want to. But you still need to have points that are touching the surface of your original shape so that your eye, when you hold it up, it'll kind of continue that curve around. All right, so once I have some shape on all my leaves, then I can start with the undercutting. So essentially, it doesn't matter whether I'm going to do a smooth leaf in the end, whether I'm going to incise the veins, or whether I'm going to do them proud. I get to this point to begin with, no matter what I'm going to do. So now I'm ready for some undercutting. This is just more of a pencil shape kind of bit. And essentially, and why I want that nice 90-degree angle is it will help me with my undercutting. Let's see. Oh, you'll see real well on here. So all I have to do is I'm going to take that bit, and I want the cut to go straight in, but I'm not going to plunge my bit in like that. I'm just going to drag it in the corner. And you'll start getting the undercut.
That bit cuts on either side of it too, right?
Huh?
That bit seems to cut either on the left or
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I'm either pushing it in or pulling. Yeah, it's spinning around. It's going to cut all the way around. So, yeah. What's that?
How far deeper is the undercut?
That kind of depends on how much wall thickness you have. And what I'm going to do, I'm going kind of in just a little bit. What I do is go in a little bit and start the undercut. And then you can see that the edge of the leaf is kind of, it's going to look thick to begin with. Let's see. Let's come out here and do some. I'm not going to undercut the whole thing. But if I plunge this in too far and try to do the full depth that I might want to go, all this little fiber is going to pack up in those flutes and it's going to start to burn. So what I do is I undercut it a little bit. I'm going to change to a larger size bit, one that covers a little more surface area. And I'm just going to knock that back corner or chamfer that corner off to the undercut. So it'll relieve wood from one side of the bit so it won't bind on my cutter. Let's see. I'm going to hold this up so you can kind of see how it's thick edge here. So all I'm going to do is start angling that back. So what I want to do is have the appearance of a thin edge at the edge of the leaf without making them so thin. You know, I don't want to undercut the whole way because I want to have some support in there. I don't want them fragile, but I do want them to have more of a thin look to them. So if I just relieve some of that wood, then I can come back if I've got a lot of wall thickness and I can hit it a lick again and go further back. Be careful at tips or at stems. Don't undercut on one side and undercut on the other and meet in the back. So you can just keep kind of working it back and kind of angling it up or rolling the leaf. Let me work on this one that's overlapping so I can finish this guy up. I'm just knocking it back so it's basically just angling up to the edge. But any place that I've got some good wall height, I can almost dig back in there and get a cave and get a real heavy shadow line. I'm just going to do a little bit there for you. Give a little bit more. All right. So on this one, I'm kind of angling up. If I was going to do something like, say, my live oak leaves, I would do my undercutting. I would take, I make little sanding sticks somewhere here. There's my little bamboo sanding stick. And I might take a little piece of sandpaper, clean up that undercut under there, and then roll that edge. The live oaks have kind of a curled edge, almost like this magnolia leaf. So I might sand down to my undercut, so it gives the appearance of a thin edge there without making it so fragile. So I would continue undercut on the whole thing. Now, invariably when you're undercutting, that's why one of the reasons I leave that little 1/16 of an inch wiggle room, because no matter how you try to undercut, you're going to get a slight little angle. So that's when you're going to run the risk of making a pierced piece if you're not careful. So you need to allow for a little wiggle room there. I'm going to come in and just kind of, if I dig into the background any, I might take that bit and just kind of blend out, if my undercut made a little line in the piece, blend it back. Okay, so now I make my decisions, whether I want a smooth leaf or what I'm going to do with it. Say I want a smooth leaf. I could incise some veins in and sand it, but I'm going to show you some of my little sanding tricks here. I used to use a detailed sander made by Finkst. It's about a $200 little machine. Really cute little detailed sander. But it had some issues and they wouldn't help me out, so I decided to come up with a new method. So this is the little screw mandrels. A lot of us have them for our cutoff wheels, for our Dremel tools, for our flap sanders, or the cutoff saw things that they have for Dremel tools. So what I have done is taken out the screw on this, put this in here, and now I have my little micro sander. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take, sorry about my head up there. Hopefully I don't have a bald spot. We're going to take my 3M double-sided wall mount tape. Let's see, let's put it on your favorite piece of sandpaper or a little strip. We're going to take our hole punch here.
You're high tech.
And we are going to make us a little mini rotary sander. Now, if you can't, this one I actually found at Michael's in the scrapbooking section. It's larger than a paper cutter. All that you can find is squares and diamonds and all this kind of stuff. So doesn't have to be a hole punch. You can get you a leather punch. You can get you an arch punch. You can get a gasket punch, whatever. Get some kind of punch. This one I actually chuck up in my drill press. Take my little diamond stick and sharpen it between turnings. About ground that one all the way, but you can get all different sizes of these, and you can punch you up a bunch of little sanding discs. Punch a bunch. Okay. Get these guys back in my bag here. So we're gonna, let me go for a little bigger one. We're gonna peel off the little paper back here. Be careful that if you got dusty fingers, don't touch your dusty fingers to that, because once you get some dust on there, it will not stick. Stick it on my little mandrel here. Turn, just like you're sanding on the lathe, you turn the speed down. We turn my tool way down. Now I have a little detail micro sander. Now this is 180 grit, and that's probably about the coarsest grit that I use, only because if you get much coarser grit, it gets real grabby, and some of you guys are going to tend to be heavy-handed. There you go. See, I just spun it right off. So if you're heavy-handed, it's going to spin that right off. So you peel it off and you stick another one on. So you can sand the whole contour. If you come up and look at my little live oak leaves, you'll see that there's all kind of little undulations in there. I get kind of the overall shape in the carving, and then I'll sand in a lot of little texture with this. I'm not going to do the whole thing because I'm going to do something else on this one. If you wanted smooth leaves on all of them, what you can do for the bottom leaf is you can take a smaller mandrel.
What grit paper are you using?
This is 180 grit.
180.
Yeah, any coarser than that, and it just snatches them right off of there. They get a little grabby. Now, there's not that much stickum on there. But with that oversized disc on that small mandrel, I can get right up under my undercut here. And as I'm working it away, you'll start seeing that it's going to wear the foam away, so you'll almost get a reverse cone in there. So then it'll even go further back in there. So you can continue sanding your whole thing. If your carving wasn't very smooth and you wanted it a little smoother before you did veins or anything, you could. Now see, those things fly off. I will tell you, they don't stick back on. There's not enough stickum for that, but there's plenty of stickum to stick to the floor. So by the end of the day, when I'm doing a lot of sanding, I'll be down there, unless I've got lots of dust on the floor, which is usually the case, so then they don't stick. Okay, so you can sand your thing smooth if you wanted to, or you can come in here and do your veins. So at this point, this is when I would bother to draw in all my little veins. Like I said, I like to be kind of realistic. So it's nice to have either the leaf or a picture of a leaf that has the veining pattern in there. All the, most of them have kind of a unique vein pattern. So if you want a realistic look at a leaf. Okay, so if I was going to incise the veins in there, this is a little diamond bit. Generally, I have my students get a very inexpensive set. It's about 20 bits for $7.50 or something like that. And the reason I do that is there's going to be one or two shapes in there that you're going to really like. That's when I would go and spend the $10 or more for a really good diamond bit. Figure out which one you want to use and you're going to use most often, and then get an expensive one that. I think of diamond bits as rotary sandpaper, not as a carving bit, but I'm generally working with hardwoods. I like turning hardwoods, so I like carving hardwoods. So unless you're working with something very soft like basswood or something like that, it is not a carving bit, it's a finishing bit. So think of it as rotary sandpaper. So having said that, you turn the speed on your carver way down. Anytime you're sanding, turn it way down. If you're going very fast, it's just going to load up with wood fiber and start burning. So I'm generally going about quarter speed on this thing. Now for this bit, and I'm going to incise this vein in here, but instead of holding the tool like that, if I lay it over on edge, about as horizontal as I can get, that leading edge will kind of make the groove that the tail end's going to follow. Now you can see that that's kind of raising a little bit of fuzz on there. And initially when I was doing these, I was making them a little bit deeper, and they started looking a little harsh to me. As you as you go along, you improve. So what I've started doing is I will take my little sanding stick and basically just kind of open out that edge, just kind of roll it out. It gives a little softer look to it. Also takes care of any of that fuzzing, any extraneous pencil lines. Just a little steel cutter ball bit. I'm going to go back up to carving speed. This little ball bit is what I use to stipple the background. And if you can kind of stipple your way up under the leaves and out, and like I said before, you can cover up a multitude of little bumps and sins with this. This is when you go drink a lot of coffee and sit there and stipple away. Just stipple away.
Wouldn't a nice glass of wine work better?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I think the glass of wine and some wood burning, it's kind of meditative. That would be nice. But that you just stipple away. So I would stipple all the way underneath. Now for what I like to do for the texturing on the leaves, I want to give kind of the look of these little secondary mid veins in there. So in order to do that, instead of little dots like I was doing here, I'm doing divots. So I'm kind of just dragging it across irregular lengths. I don't just soldier them across in little rows. So you can kind of get the little pattern going in there. You can do that. You can burn in. You can also, if you're going to burn your background, you can use, I tend to use the wood burner as a hot knife, not as a shading tool. I almost like the Grand Prix flamethrower kind of thing. So red hot. Red hot. If you're going to burn the background, you could actually do your undercutting with the wood burner. I do a kind of a combination. This would start the burn on my background, and it's easier to cut with that. Let's turn it down a little bit for this. And then I would take my carver and cut the back side of the leaf. So I would have a natural wood look. It would cut through all the burning there, but I also have the burning starting on my background. Okay. All right, so we can burn in our veins. And if I'm going to paint a piece, I tend to use the golden fluid acrylic paint, which is a opaque paint, so it's going to cover up, whatever I do. So it doesn't matter whether I burn in the texture or carve in the texture, I can get the texture on there. So you can burn in your veins. Of course, that goes much quicker. This is just a little loop tip. You can use a ball bit or whatever. So if I was going to stipple the background, like I said, you could use a ball bit. You can use this one on edge, which will almost give that stippled look. Let's turn this on. This is just a little activated charcoal filter fan that I've started demoing with. I kind of think that breathing smoke is breathing smoke, so I try to avoid doing that. So you can stipple with that. You can also, if I wanted a similar texture to that, if you use this on edge, of course, it's going to give a little bit different look. Go that way, Smoke. I can drag it across here in my irregular little divots. Get a similar look that I did with the ball bit. Come on, crank it up. There we go. Don't do that. I hear it about to go. Alright, so you can do a similar thing like that. Or if we want to do proud veins, turn that back off for a second. Proud veins are not particularly hard. You just have to pay attention to what you're doing. And this one we were kind of incising in the vein. We were incising down our pencil line. In this case, we're going to outline on either side of our pencil line, so you have to leave the pencil line. So what you don't want to do is follow one side and follow all the way up and cut off all your little side veins. So you gotta go on this side of the vein, down this side, up this side. Down and around this side, on the other side. I'm going to do a similar little pattern like that, but I have to carry that through that little cut, little channel that I just did in there. Just doing my irregular little divots here to kind of give the look of those little mid veins. You can take the little ball bit and kind of hit the edge if you get your, if you have a edge to your vein that you don't want. So all that's going to be left is that proud vein. So the last thing I would do, because of course we've raised a little bit of fuzz there, is I would use my little 3M radial bristle sanders. This is the 220 grit. It's about the only one I do. It's just enough that it'll take care of this fuzzing over here and will kind of burnish the high spots on all this texture. So that's what's going to kind of make it pop. So I'm going to turn the speed down on this since I'm sanding and it's a large diameter thing. So you kind of see the fuzzing in here. So it takes care of that fuzzing. And you might have to turn it a couple different directions to be sure you get all the fuzz off, but you can see how it starts burnishing the high spots there. It's really fun on the wood burning because you can almost get a two-tone effect. If you've got some heavy burning, you can almost take it back to wood color on top, and so then you'll have the dark wood in the bottom. But you can kind of see I've got a similar texture there that I did over there. So any questions on that? What I'm going to do is I'm going to show just about a dozen slides or so on a piece that you can actually see from start to finish on how I use this technique on it. So basically going around, you can kind of see my hands locked together there, just working in the background area. Remove the background first to a uniform depth, and then I start shaping the leaves. Giving a little bit of shape. So you can kind of see on the profile on the side that every leaf is kind of touching the surface so that you kind of maintain that original shape that you had. I forgot to take a picture in between because I get all wrapped up in what I'm doing. So now I've got it. I burned the background on that and done the proud veins on it. It's kind of another view there. You can see it. I like putting lids on my pieces. And this one, and you have to be careful, that stem is kind of offset, but you have to be sure that stem is going straight up and down in that grain on that thing so it's not going to snap off. And then I painted that one with the fall colors.
How many hours are you looking at work?
however long it takes. I don't, you know, it's,
Nothing less, nothing more.
yeah, you know, sometimes a piece will go real smoothly, sometimes it takes a while, but, you know, like that little ginkgo piece, I may carve on that for a week period. What I did tonight is a much faster rate than I'm comfortable doing.
Right.
So, I may carve on a piece for a week. On a little guy like that. So, yeah.
That's
Okay.
beautiful, very beautiful.
So I want to thank y'all for having me.